Awesome. All right, well, let's go ahead. I'm going to put this in presenter mode. And then we're going to go ahead and get started talking about the 4-year trajectory here at SFGirls. So we're going to start just like we do with everything, a reframing or a revisioning, just our mission, our tenets, and our learning goals. So the mission, which you have all seen multiple times, really I'm hitting that sense of our goal is to give students courage and skills so they can be resourceful leaders with boundless aspirations. And really our why is that commitment to ingenuity, humanity, and social change. Our tenets, cultivate belonging, pursue integrity, rise to challenge, those are put in place to really protect the culture so that we can enter in and really focus on the mission. But we need to make sure that everyone feels that they belong, that everybody is feeling safe to rise to challenges and take risk, and that they're willing to pursue integrity, which is doing what they value in that moment of choice. Our learning goals are those fundamental kind of underlying skills that they need in order to accomplish all of this. So let's talk about academics. And I'm going to start with our outcome is a 4-year education that gets them ready for college, is sort of our thing. So this is a list of the UC freshman requirements, which is as if you are entering as a freshman as compared to transferring from someone else. So this is how it's named. And our graduation requirements. It probably doesn't take much to scan through and see that we meet or exceed every one of the requirements that the UCs would look for, as well as, and I'm naming the UCs here, but actually many universities are very similar. The UCs tend to be the tail that wags the dog in a lot of ways in California, and so it tends to be a benchmark. I've put a link down here at the bottom. You are welcome to click on it just from the screen. I will also post it here in the chat. Let me see. Well, I'll post in the chat towards the end. But this is where you can go and get kind of a little bit more information. Interesting things for the UC application, and every school is a little bit different. Every university is a little different. The UCs only take classes or GPA, grades from the summer after the high school 9th grade year and through the first semester of your senior year. So the UCs really value that kind of middle part as compared to the 2 end parts for thinking about their admissions portion. We are in process of becoming accredited. So our WASC accreditation visit is this March 24th, just a few weeks from now. After we have our WASC accreditation, and we are looking in really great shape, so we have no worries about not being able to get that, then we'll be able to follow through with the UCs and get course approvals for all of our classes. Another funky thing with the UCs is that they only take GPA for classes that are approved through them. So they kind of run that. This image is just you may recognize it as sort of a familiar format for a business model canvas. This is a school canvas, and we're looking at what are the levers that we can pull in order to really get a great program going. The program is mission informed, and you will note that there is a big emphasis on student agency, which we define as voice and choice, all throughout this, including through our graduation requirements, which if I go back just for a minute, I want to name, although most of you have seen, but computer science and data science really are 2 of our differentiators. And so the reason I'm highlighting that now is that when we talk about these, you don't really see a lot about the computer science or a lot about the data science. We believe those are languages that our students are going to need in this next generation in order to participate fully in just about any discipline. Any discipline is going to need them to have some sort of data science experience. Down here at the bottom, I want to really highlight the leadership and leadership. And what we are meaning by that is the capital L leadership, which we most often associate with the people at the front of the room, the loud voices, the really dynamic personalities, and highlighting also that there are lots of valuable leaderships that are the lowercase, that small, maybe in the back scenes, maybe the quiet influencers. We will be focusing on leadership all throughout our journey, but we want the girls to be leaders in their own voice, in their own skins, in their own thoughts. There is not just one way to be an effective leader. And so it's one of those that we're really trying to highlight and pull out as threads. Our grading and transcripts, and this feeds into our college prep process, which is why I'm sort of going over it. We do have a screen side chat a little later this month that's really focusing on grading. But our grading philosophy is grounded in feedback loops. So teachers use rubrics. The rubrics are set up on a 1 to 4 scale. And so students will be receiving on a regular basis, recurring basis, you know, this biology project, you got a 3.2. This history assignment, you got a 2.1, right? So constantly students are doing that. We really do not focus on the number. We really use those rubrics as a strengths base. Here's what we are seeing you do. Here's where there's still room for growing. Here's where we've seen growth. And that is that feedback loop over and over. Our transcripts do have letter grades, but you do not need to earn a 4 in, say, your math class in order to have an A in the class. So we are really trying to bring down that we don't want perfection as our top tier. So a 3.6 in any class is an A. And the scale is kind of, you know, we really thought deeply about what that meant for a scale. So like a 2.26 is a C. And that's listed on their transcripts, but those are different components that they have going on. On the topic of advanced rigor, advanced topic courses really are the move as compared to moving away from AP topics. And the reason many schools have moved away from the advanced placement courses, they're fairly rigid on what that test looks like, on the method of assessment, on the content, and you need to move pretty quickly through them. And so greater depth can really be achieved through advanced topic courses. So this is in line with what many of the schools here in San Francisco are doing. We also have a whole lineup of very novel core and elective coursework for the students to choose from. This is going to come in really strongly into play when they're doing their college admissions process. So let's look at our kind of main big piece here, and it is the program map. Okay, so there is a link here, and I'm going to take you to that link. I'll also put it in the chat just in case anybody is not able to click on it. So you can look at it now, you can look at it later. But this is hard to see my bar. I'm going to stop sharing just for a second because I lost my window. So on this bar, the document that you see, go ahead and open it either through the content tabs or from here. And just skim around. I'm not going to be giving you enough time to really thoroughly read it, but skim around. Okay. What are things that you are seeing? And feel free to go ahead and just shout out something if you that strikes you one way or the other.
How important for transfer students is it? So to go in sciences, biology, chemistry, physics seems, I guess more traditional. I experienced that. However, our daughters have gone conceptual physics, then chemistry, then biology, then sort of elective their senior year. So how how does that impact transfer students not to have biology that freshman year?
No worries, we just trade it out for later. If they've already had physics, we do it differently. A number of schools do the conceptual physics first. We actually put it a little bit later, primarily because we see kind of one of those gatekeepers as math. And so some students who have a little bit weaker math skills feel more impacted by that as their physics class as a 9th grade level, whereas later we can address that. But transfer students, we're good at getting creative. We can figure that part out.
Thanks.
Yeah. Did anything stand out to anybody else? We're going to talk through this in more detail, but I'm just looking for an impression in the moment.
What's DEI?
It stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion. Yes.
So,
All right.
Yvonne, I think we had, I know we did math for 3 years. I think in the senior year, there's no math. So is that, I know we did pre-calc, if I remember right, I think if you're from the earlier slide. So is there an opportunity in the senior to take calc as part of an elective, or is that?
Absolutely. And so when we name that electives in the 12th grade, they have so much flexibility in what they are going to be taking. So some are going to take calculus, some might take statistics, some might be taking a business math or an applied math. So the math for that 12th grade kind of falls into that. A number of colleges actually are really looking for specific things. And so that's their opportunity to be able to do that as well.
Got it.
Yep. Okay, so let's dig in just a little bit here and look at some of these pieces bit by bit. I'm putting up the daily schedule. I know most of you know that, but what I'm wanting to just highlight too, we're asking a lot. This is a rigorous program. They have a lot on their plate. And so balance is something that's really important for us to put both into the days and into the weeks and into the terms. We also are making time for the things that we say that we value. So we value collaboration. There's time in there for collaboration. We value students being able to do clubs regardless of what they have going on outside of the school day. And so time to do clubs is built in. There's also a lot of student ownership. This current iteration of the map has had the students' input. This is actually the 3rd iteration of the schedule. Not huge tweaks, but some tweaks, and this is based on their feedback. All right, let's talk about the themes. So in 9th grade, really the theme is origin stories, and you see that show up in their English class. Biology has a strong evolutionary component of it, so thinking about how things started, how they've evolved. Data science, the class that they're getting ready to take this spring, is an opportunity for them to look at what is the narrative or the story that this data is telling me? How do I represent that story? In our connections time and X days time, we'll be looking and have been looking at storytelling. This year we went ahead and did design thinking in the 9th grade year, but I think we're actually going to swap that. So moving forward, design thinking will be more of a 10th grade and public speaking in the 9th grade. Our current students will just take public speaking next year and then we'll be back on track, no big deal. In advisory, we focus on belonging, which is really core to your origin story. So this narrative of who I am and where I've come from and where I'm going. In the 10th grade, we're going to look at systems of change. Again, they'll have a literary activism class for English, chemistry, rates of change, how pieces are put together and how they blow up. Not hopefully in lab, but sometimes. At world history also will be looking at change over time. So this theme of systems of change will be showing up not just in class, but also in their connections time, in their X days. And advisory, you'll be looking at purpose and thinking about what is my purpose and what are things that I'm charged with holding or changing. 11th grade, wicked problems, those problems that don't actually have solutions. In fact, sometimes we don't even know when we put a solution in place, if it is a solution or not, it's so far out. But really looking at big, messy things. And that will also show up in their coursework. It will show up in their connections, and it will also show up, world awareness and global citizenship will show up in their advisory courses as well. And then the 12th grade is really about influence and impact, thinking about moving forward, looking at where they're going with those different things. Advisory and connections, and I'm just reiterating, this is a place where we're building those themes out. This particular photo, the students were practicing introducing each other, right? So when you are in a new setting and you're making introductions, what does that look and feel like? It's not natural for our students to be able to do these sorts of things. So advisory and connections is where we're really building some of those skills. Mindfulness Matters. This is the arc or the trajectory of what they look at. So in 9th grade, it's really sort of focused internally, looking at my own mindset and my own habits and how to do things. 10th grade is looking kind of, it's the more traditional topics of sex and substances, drugs, alcohol, etc., and a focus on knowing myself, what are healthy risk-taking and healthy choices for me to make. 11th grade, we move on to relationships and really looking at what those look like outside. And then 12th grade, tying it back together. How do I keep these things balanced, both myself and my relationships and my commitments and my choices? In pathways, this is where we're fitting some of those intentional learning skills, including financial literacy or leadership. There's an adulting class. Every student should know how to patch a hole in the wall before they move off on their own, right? These are things that are important. They need to know, when I get my first job and I'm making money and I get a check, how come there's only half of it there, right? So where is my money going and what does that look like? And how do I do saving and all sorts of different pieces. But these are the pathways sort of classes where we're intentionally looking at those. Experiential days, again, many of our current families, you already have a sense of what those are looking like. You've seen some skill building, you've seen some community engagement. In their 11th and 12th grade year, we'll really focus on mentoring and internships and being out in the community on their own, not just with the entire school group. So I want to pause for a moment because that was a fair amount of stuff. And I want everybody to think back to when you were 14. I know it was a while ago for some of us. So think back to when you were 14. What did you want to be? Okay, so what did you want to be when you were 14? And I'm going to ask you to type your answer in the chat, but don't hit enter yet. Okay, so type your answer in the chat, and then when I say go, you'll hit enter and we'll see this sort of 14-year-old dream waterfall vision of what we thought we were going to be. Everybody ready? Okay, go ahead and hit enter. I like yours, or nice. Scan up and down. What did you think? The baseball player, that was a good one, Bob. Independent, very deep, Jaswinder. Olympian, archaeologist. These are awesome. And I'm also going to say probably most of them didn't quite come true, right? Our 14-year-olds, and I have this on extensive field research, most high school students really don't like the question, what do you want to be? Because they don't really know. And it puts them in the spot of either making something up or naming something that they don't know if they can follow through on. So the question, what do you want to be when you grow up? Really hard one. We really frame this question or this sort of topic in the sense of, what do you think? What looks maybe interesting? How do you want to do this? Let's just find a path and follow it for a while. Okay, so the way that we have our program focused on the 9th and 10th grade side, we're really in exploration mode for the students. We want them trying lots of things. We want them engaging with lots of people. We want them stretched out of their comfort zone. We want to be able to celebrate strengths that show up. And then in their 11th and 12th grade years, We want them to be able to take what they've learned about themselves, fully knowing that there is still so much more to come, but actually start to play around with applying what they've learned to new situations. We'll scaffold this a ton by thinking about like, where is it safe to fail? But by this point, they've had a couple of years with us and they realize that the importance is on the process, not necessarily the product. And a great product is a lovely thing. And sometimes that does need to be the outcome, but there are a lot of times where what you learned from the process is far more valuable. And so they're hearing from lots of speakers now. That will morph and transition to them working with mentors and then also doing internships. This individualized course of study, which I want to talk about, when they get to their junior and senior year, they're actually going to map out how they want their courses to look. And they're going to do that under one of these 5 themes: applied science, design, exploration, business, and social good. And exploration is for that category of, I don't know yet. I don't know what I want to be. I haven't figured it out, but here are a few things that I know. And so we can scaffold that. This process is also supported and scaffolded by having a junior fellowship and a senior capstone. A number of schools, independent high schools, have senior capstone type projects. What we have seen in the research is that by the time you wait until you get to that like last semester of your senior year, a couple of things have happened. One, you're getting tired of school and you're looking forward. For some students, that's much more of an impact than others. But the other is the last semester of your senior year is kind of too late to learn some really important skills. And so the individualized course of study and their junior fellowship and their senior capstone are meant to be 3 pillars of them sort of crafting a narrative of what is important to them in this space. Okay. The electives that we have, these are some, there's more on the website, but these are electives that our current class felt comfortable like, hey, I could teach this, I could teach this, I could teach these. These are things that we have to choose from. When I showed you earlier the graduation requirements, there are essentially 40 terms of graduation requirements, but there are 60 slots for them in their high school experience. So roughly 1/3 of the time, they are getting to choose things that speak to them. And so crafting your narrative or setting this piece up, the students have a lot of agency on what that journey looks like. I want to show us some examples. And I'm actually going to start with the exploration one over here, okay? So what this is a sample schedule for a student, and it's the junior year in their light blue, and it's the senior year in their darker blue. And so this particular student is taking pre-calculus in their junior year, US history, physics, and English, as well as their junior fellowship. Those are all the things that are required. But this student is actually exploring and is not exactly sure what they want to do, but they know that they really like hanging out with people. They love talking. So maybe they want to be a real estate agent, or maybe they want to be a kindergarten teacher, or maybe they want to do tours at a museum. So there is a student here on campus, and I talked with her recently, and these are all things that she named. She's like, I just like talking to people. So I don't know what I want to do, but I like talking to people. This particular student doesn't love math. She's like into it. But given the course that she wants to go, this student is going to choose to take statistics as their senior class instead of calculus. There is a big trend right now, and some of you that attended the math screenside chat saw that statistics is becoming more and more valued at the college admissions level, as well as in the workplace, as a practical math that really informs a great number of subjects. This student has chosen things like human health and development, ethics and equity, finance for entrepreneurs, persuasive speech. Is going to do an independent study with a real estate agent in the neighborhood and learn more about that process. So this student is picking from a variety of science classes, literary classes, business type classes, to sort of explore a set of different things that might feel interesting to them. This student over here is really into science and math and all sorts of other things, right? So this student is going to take calculus all the way through up to multivariable calculus, and we have options past calculus. And your daughters are on track. If this is where they want to go, this is the path that we're working them through. This student is also taking, computational bioethics. This student had chosen to take American Sign Language. Our graduation requirement is that they have to go through level 3. So the student took through level 3 is not necessarily choosing to continue their world language in their senior year, but instead is picking up some stuff that robotics and AI, material science, some genetics, and kind of thinking about what that looks like for them. This third student that I'm going to show you is one who's really wanting to focus on making a change, social good. This student, and is another one that I talk with here at school, is really intrigued by the elderly. So her grandparents live with her. And she's seeing how things are harder and harder for them as they continue to age. And so looking sort of at how can I impact and make other people's lives better? So this student was looking at, I want calculus and I want statistics because I'm not exactly sure which path I'm going to go, and I want to be well prepared for both. Picking a lot of the persuasive speech, journalism, dialogue for change. So sort of that kind of, I'm going to need to be able to speak and really like make pitches and think about getting people to invest in what I want to do. This student is also, her world language or Spanish she thinks is important. She also thinks that that will be important for continuing in maybe a field where she'll be working with people that English is their second language. And so she wants to feel really confident in her Spanish speaking. So these are some of the examples of how they would craft their 11th and 12th grade schedules to really tell a particular narrative about how they're going to move through those years. This will look good for colleges. It's not the reason we're doing it. We want them to look good for colleges, and we want to make sure that they are well prepared. We care more about the students and their own sense of agency as they walk through these years. One of the #1 things that we hear back from college students, especially those freshman college students, is that they had to work a whole lot harder in high school than they're working in college. And often it's because high school was so scripted. It was so much like, do this and you do this and you do this. So you're kind of following somebody else's pathway. So being able to craft that pathway a little bit more towards your passions, and especially if you have no idea what you're doing, to be able to craft a map of things that seem interesting that might inform you for the future is a great way to go. Okay, let's look at moving into the future. And so I'm going to have you guys pause again. And I am curious, how many of you, is this going to be your first child going through the college admissions process? Can you raise your hand? Okay, saw a couple, there's another. Yeah, okay. And some of you guys look like you're great, you're doing this. All right. So one of the things that we know about college admissions, by and large, it feels more stressful or more competitive than it has in the past. So what I would like to do is give you a few seconds to think, and let's have a sort of like pop off. You can just say, like, unmute, say your word, mute again. What words do you associate with the college admissions process? What are things that come to mind?
Time consuming.
Time consuming.
Exploration.
Exploration.
It's a business.
Business, okay. Anybody else?
Can be stressful.
Yeah.
False scarcity. Oops, that's 2 words.
That's okay. We like tweaking rules around here. Anybody else?
Testing,
Testing? Yeah,
bribery,
primary.
bribery.
Bribery. Hmm.
Yeah, those guys are in prison though.
Well, I don't think all of them got caught. Just thinking. Okay. Just raising your hands. How many colleges did you apply for? When you went to college, and this is making an assumption that we are in college, so you can also like opt out. There are a lot of great paths that don't. Okay, how many colleges did you apply to? I see Judy's, Abby's, Bob's, Rob's, Stevens, Patrick's, Sarah's, Elizabeth, Kelly, Richard, okay. The average number of schools that students apply to now, or recommended, is at least 10 and up to 18, which is a pretty intense path. Now, I say that as an average. There are some that definitely pick fewer. There are some that I've seen some that have picked more. But there are a few trends in the college admissions process that I want to talk about and sort of unpack. One is that things are feeling really messy right now around standardized testing, which probably is not surprising to you. The pandemic broke that down a lot in the sense that students couldn't go sit in a cold gymnasium at a random high school on a Saturday morning all together during the pandemic. Standardized testing has been on the topic block, I won't say the chopping block, but on the talking block for a little while, in the sense that there's some equity issues that come up with standardized testing. It's pretty well known that standardized tests are biased towards the heteronormous sort of economically advantaged group by language, by accessibility, by a variety of things. And actually, there is a lot out there that shows that it's not just the standardized test, the essay questions, the prompt, the process all together, they all have equity pieces. And so I think we're going to see our college admissions process shifting somewhat in the next few years. Many of the colleges have started to accept or even encourage portfolios along with just transcripts or an application. Many of the colleges are looking for students that are unique, right? So as this picture shows, right, they're clever and they're athletic and they're musical, and you know, if they've solved cancer or created a vaccine recently, you know, that puts them up at the head of the pack. But they're really, colleges are looking for students that have had work experience, that have had a competitive sport, that have, you know, really dived deep into a passion project. So like collecting coats for the homeless and being very involved in a community engagement or community service type thing. These are all pieces that really hit that piece. What I'm going to say, and what SFGirls is saying, we are going to help your students navigate that. Going to a startup school in and of itself is unique, both by experience and by the sheer story of what it is. We are continuing to the Individualized Course of Study, and the way that they'll be able to craft the story that their transcript shows as well as the other is really helpful. We are continuing to thinking about our vision moving forward. We would love to add some experiential learning components. We were thinking of scaffolding it along this way, sort of starting local and expanding out. We know that we want to continue to put effort into our performing arts and our athletics program. We want enough students in the capacity to be able to do drama productions, to do competitive sports, to really do a lot more with community engagement. In order to do all of these things, we're going to need some more resources. So as much as this team is really awesome, and I love working with Abby and Laura and the rest of our teachers and amazing staff, we know that we need to bring on a college counselor. Our plan is that this next year, the 22-23 year, which will be 10th grade year for your students, or for many of your students, we would contract with a college counselor with the primary focus of getting our school profile written, which is a document that you send to colleges for them to know what your program is like, as well as get our name on their radar. And so really building those relationships with colleges. Then the following year, to have a full-time on-staff college counselor that can continue that work and really specifically work with your students, start crafting those materials, pull those together. Another need that we are looking at, we have a school counselor that we are working with right now, but we would like to see if we can make that a better fit and find a little bit smoother and more effective way of navigating that. A learning specialist, more full-time. And right now, these are all hats that either myself, Laura, or Abby are wearing. And it would just be nice to have extra resources. So my background lets me do a fair job on the learning specialist, but it would be nice to expand and have that on the horizon. Community partnerships, both from a service component as well as for internships and other X days and partnerships, would be somebody that we are wanting to collaborate with. And then an extensive network of mentors and internships. I met earlier this week with 6 young women, some in venture capitalism, some in others, but all in their 20s, that are excited. They'll be coming and meeting with our students and doing small group mentoring this year. And so that is where we want to put a lot of focus in the next year for both that mentorship program and having an extensive network of options for your girls by the time that they are juniors and seniors. Okay, lots of stuff. I'm anticipating questions. I am anticipating maybe some college level questions. And before I go there, just for a second, I think I want to, let's see. I want to show you this one thing, and we're going to talk more about this when we get to the grading conversation in a couple of weeks. But I want to show you briefly a typical transcript. And then I want to show you, oops, can I bring it down again? Nope, I can bring it down again. I want to show you a mastery transcript. So we have partnered with the Mastery Transcript Consortium. A number of schools here in the Bay Area were founding members of this. The Mastery Transcript Consortium is working with universities, and there are a fair number that are accepting an alternative style of a transcript, one that's built more like a resume and more about the skills instead of the content. And so one of the big pieces that they have tackled is college admissions officers need to be able to read it quickly. And so this format of being able to kind of see this student is very strong in transferable skills and global citizenship. This student doesn't look like they loved health and physical education or communication or the arts quite as much, but seems like they are very strong in both their science and math and their humanities courses, right? So this is an alternate way of sort of setting this up. When we get to that stage, we will be offering students options on what that looks like, and we will be working our way through that process primarily based on the university partnerships and what they are looking for, so that we are really building that not just for the students, but also for the path of the colleges that they'll want to apply to. So that's a lot of content, and I am pausing now, stopping now, so that we can dive into some questions. And I'm happy to go into more detail, but I wanted to give sort of a big picture, and then let's scoop in to see what is interesting or could be informative for you.
Yvonne, I just want to name one in the chat. Are there plans to include equity and inclusion resources, or what do we have maybe in place?
Thank you. So we are working with an organization called Seeds, and this year they've done professional development with our teaching faculty. So Seeds is an organization that focuses on restorative justice, restorative practice, and equity and inclusion is sort of an inherent component of what that looks like. We'll be working with the Cypress Resilience Project. They are coming in to work with our students in just another week or two. There is actually, just like you can be CPR and first aid certified, you can also be mental health certified, in the sense that you're not a doctor, but you are someone who can help them when they're going through that. So we're building the DEI work, and I would say the inclusion is really important. We are trying to focus a bar higher than that on the belonging piece. So inclusion is, you know, you're invited to my party. It's going to be at my house. I've got all sorts of food. I've got music lined up. It's going to be so much fun. Whereas belonging is more about like, hey, let's have a party. What do you want the theme to be? Okay, I'll bring the food. What do you want to do? So that it is a co-created sense of inclusion. And so we are trying to really build that in all across the board. Yes. And then let's see. Marivi, you were naming too that the UCs won't even accept tests right now, which is true. And a number, before the pandemic hit, I think all but 5 universities throughout the United States, so if you picture how many of them, all but 5 had dropped the SAT-2 requirements. Those were the subject level tests. So most all universities had like pulled back from those standard, the subject content, and were just on the SAT or ACT, and many of them were dropping those as well. It is a very unique point in time for what that college admissions process looks like. Yeah. Let's see. Other wonderings?
Yvonne, I'll ask a question. You mentioned additional resources and staff, and obviously if you could wave a magic wand, you'd have all of those at once. How are you going to prioritize those, and what are the plans? Like, you know, are all of those in place by next year, or what's your thinking on that?
I would say there's maybe 2 at the top priority for me. And out of those, and I think Laura's kind of on the same boat. I feel like we need to either have me up my game or have someone support in building those community partnerships. So one of my highest priorities next year is to build out that internship program, because I feel like that's a really important part, and it's not a snap your fingers like, oh, now I have like 15 different places that will let one of our kids go work there. So that I think is really important and is time consuming as well. So that piece I think is probably one of our most important pieces. I think the learning specialist part, we can probably continue for another year to 2 with me supporting those students, and then finding some really particular partners with our teachers. So I think that one, and the school counselor. We are working, actually the Cypress Resilience Project, who is coming in, has had a great deal of effectiveness with actually contracting that out a bit, and then training our faculty on looking for warning signs and sort of doing that first level of diagnosis. And so I would rather spend the professional development money on all of our teachers, everyone in the building, having this sense of awareness and having this sense of training and sense of agency and being able to help our students, and then send our students to a professional that is contracted with us as that's appropriate, as compared to paying a salary for someone who's here part of the time, but the girls don't necessarily connect with as much. So we're looking at what are viable models for that school counseling position. So I would think that community partnership, The learning specialist and the college counselor the following year, I think, are the two big ones. And we're re-looking kind of at the school counseling model as we do that. Yep.
I didn't, but are we doing anything with community service? Is that, maybe I missed it in the slide, or I don't know whether we're doing that.
No, that's good. So the term that was in the slide is called community engagement.
I got it.
And it's kind of a newer PC type term. A lot of times service means you just go do something for someone, but you're not really in relationship or partnership with them. So engagement is more of a reciprocal relationship. I had 3 different organizations with things set up for this year, and each one fell through because of COVID reasons. Like they didn't want kids in their facility because there was liability. There was like, they were working in, like, it was just really complicated this year. But students we've got a few different things already lined up for next year. And that is something that really intentionally we'll be doing on those X days. So when we can take sort of an entire day, or we can meet with them half days multiple times throughout the year so that we're building those relationships, not just doing that. I would also, my thought was the 9th and 10th grade years really would be exploring. So while I know some of the girls have really strong opinions on how they want to do service, I want them to experience different types of environments and ways that they can help. And then their junior, senior year, they can kind of gravitate towards what they feel like, oh, this is my space. Like when I was a 9th grader, I just wanted to volunteer at the, humane shelter and take care of cats and dogs. Like that's my ideal way of doing community service. But then when I went and visited the women and children's shelter, or then when I went and did this, I saw something that now really speaks to me, and that's what I want to pursue now on my own. So again, with that sort of 9th, 10th grade exploration, and 11th, 12th more application where they have more agency on how they do it.
Got it. Cool.
So Yvonne, I was curious about I love the fact that you're trying to line up mentors, young women, for internships. Where you see that program evolving into, or I've actually loved the fact that you're bringing in all these empowered women or people that could be role models for our girls. And I do have this sense that the closer in age they are to the girls might be good. So I'm curious about what your thoughts are there.
Yes, one of our board members, Madeline McLean, kind of brought this to us as an idea that she had a real passion for it. And so we're starting with her rounding up a whole bunch of her friends. So someone who's already in their 20s, rounding up a bunch of friends that are also in their 20s and local and have different interests and different courses. The original vision was that we were going to have one mentor per girl, and that mentor would stay with them all 4 years. That really isn't a very scalable model. I mean, 4 years is a long time to make a volunteer commitment, especially if you're in your 20s and there's a lot changing in your life during that phase, or in any of our lives, whatever phase we're in. We also felt like the 9th graders didn't really know quite as much what to do with them yet. And they didn't have a lot of experiences on going out. So it was just like less time to talk. So what we have modeled now or pulled back is we're going to, we have 7 or 8 mentors at this point, and we decided we would be bringing them on campus multiple times this year to get to know a small group of students, and that those mentors are also invited to things like the history symposium at the end of the year, right? Like imagine as a 14 or 15-year-old, someone comes to hear me give a talk on my UN Sustainable Development Goal, right? As much as you love them, they like it when other people show up for them. You're supposed to. And when someone who doesn't have to does it for them, it is a huge boost to their self-esteem. And so knowing that there are women out there who believe in them and are worth taking time to hang out with is a big deal. I think we will keep that small group model through the 10th grade. That feels sustainable to me. And then we will have the mentor work with them one-on-one throughout their junior year while they're doing that fellowship and research and that kind of component. They're mapping their model, and we'll see how it evolves in their senior year. I think some of the students are going to feel really close with their mentor and want to keep that connection going. And some of the students are going to be like, oh yeah, this was good, but I did my year, I'm okay. And they are just all as different as we are different. So there's a lot, but that's how I'm picturing it evolving right now.
So the other part of that I was also, the inspirational part of it really rings true to me, just because of the people you brought in this past year. I think it's been a great opportunity for the girls. So in line with that, you know, focusing on not so much on the mentorship part, but just getting people that are early on in their careers that are passionate and loving what they're doing to come in, even if it's just for a short presentation or a speech, to kind of inspire these girls, even on a one-shot sort of deal. Sounds like something worthwhile.
I agree with you. They had I'm pulling up her name so I don't mix it up. Let's see. Speakers. By the end of the day, after talking with all of the students, my capacity for pulling names off the top of my head starts to drop. So that's why I'm going there. She came and talked with them. I want to say her name is Brandy, but I don't want to take time to look it up. She's 24. She was a competitive swimmer. She grew up here in the Bay Area, went to college, USC, on a swimming scholarship, competed, junior Olympian, lots of titles, but always kind of like not the top, like second tier. And so then when she graduated, what did she want to do? Like, it's hard to make a living as a competitive swimmer unless you really are like at the highest. This was actually really intriguing because she visited with our students at the beginning of the Olympics. And so talking about what does it feel like to kind of be in the second tier? Like, you're so much better than so many people, but what does the connotation of a second tier mean? And she had such a healthy perspective on that, which was so amazing to share with the students. And then her other passion was politics. And so when she graduated, she gave herself a week to go to DC, follow through on some job interviews, see what happened. And of course, she got a job, but then now she's on her second job. Now she lives in Colorado. She's working with a senator on his campaign and doing all sorts of stuff. But yeah, this like 24-year-old kind of like, you know, competitive, dynamic. We had a graduate student come earlier this year too, to talk with them in person, to share what she was doing. So you're right, there's something really special about those younger people and connecting our girls with them. And the number of 20-something-year-olds that have the flexibility in their careers to be able to do this at this point is, you know, a little slimmer pool than those of us that have had a little more time under our belts. Yeah. All of which is to say, if you guys know young and crazy, you know, inspiring young women, let me know. We would love to bring them in for our students to work with.
Yvonne, I was also wondering if, you know, now that we've all become a lot more familiar with Zoom over the last few years for good and bad reasons, if you looked at, you know, or thought about, you know, bringing in international people, you know, in that way too, where, you know, it seems like we could have you know, access to some really interesting people from outside the Bay Area.
Yes.
And I know it's great to get people in person, but I think there's some really interesting opportunities to get people from afar now too.
I agree. Yeah, the silver linings of pandemic are real. We've got some you know, a different framework for thinking about connecting to people than we really did before, which is interesting. Yeah. I work with a student, a young person in Africa each year for the Teach for Africa, and they usually come and visit here in the States and shadow you and stay for a couple weeks and kind of glean things from American style of teaching and pedagogy and whatnot. So I had one last year and we did it via Zoom, and that one was frustrating because the connectivity issues in Africa are so much more impactful than they have been here. But I would love for the students to be able to engage all around. Okay, Richard is asking a question. First part, as part of World Citizenships, are there any plans to include traveling as a school for girls to experience different cultures? And two, how are clubs and affinity groups determined and chosen? So let me talk about the travel one first. That was sort of in my future vision. I definitely, I am married to an immigrant to this country and have really enjoyed traveling all over the world for a variety of reasons. And I think there's something really powerful about how clean the air is in a Costa Rican rainforest, and how looking across a field of shanties in Philippines, like it just, there's something that you just can't even kind of process until you're in that space. We made an intentional choice when we started the school that our tuition would be all inclusive. We wanted there not to be continuing topics of equity or money coming up on an ongoing basis. What that means then is, you know, whereas in my old school model, I might have said something like, you know, the Outward Bound program's just like, you know, $12.50 for, you know, a 5-day trip. It's a pretty good price. Like, you know, parents try to pay. From an equity perspective and the way we set up our tuition, we would pay for those trips and we would make sure that everybody is included and it's like not an issue. And that just starts to get expensive on the travel side of things. But it is a strong vision of ours. Again, particularly from a service point of view, we have a lot of people in our own backyard that we can help. We don't need to travel to the other side of the world in order to be able to help people. Traveling to the other side of the world is really important for other reasons too. So we want to make sure that we do it really thoughtfully. And this is one of the things that budget-wise is probably starting year 3. And we'll just have to see how that goes. But it's really important. And I appreciate that you're asking about it, Richard. The second one, how are clubs and affinity groups determined? The students lead that work. So the students come up with what they want to do. One of the pieces that they gave us feedback on early in the year and got reinforced is that they need more adult help for like actually structuring those or holding them kind of accountable for agendas or following through on pieces. And so in this third term, we've sort of mixed up the club structure and a teacher is assigned with each club. So I'm with the beach cleanup, general sustainability, environmental, making the world a better place club. They keep changing the name. Marty is with the crochet and knitting club. There is a strong vibe going on right now for that. Laura's with the Minecraft, the gaming club. So they're like doing their thing. Yeah, so the clubs, as they're like continuing, the students decide what the clubs are and who wants to be in it. We have at least one club in this year protected during the week. And then they go back and forth. So that's one of their things. And we're working on kind of supporting or scaffolding it a little bit better for them. Yes. And then Jasmine, you're asking about when they're getting their mentor internship options, checking what fields the girls are interested in. And yes, actually, it's almost the other way around. The girls are telling us what they're interested in, and we are hunting down mentors and internships that fit their needs. That is obviously not going to be completely perfect because, you know, if they come up with Galapagos turtle reproduction, like, I don't know that I got one of those. Maybe. But we'll see how that goes. But they'll let us know what they are, and we'll work to get a good match. And then they are already starting to pick up on the fact that even when like what you want doesn't work out, there's a lot of good that comes the other way. They recently were telling me like all these speakers, right? So like all these speakers, it's the same thing. They didn't know what they wanted to do. Then they knew what they wanted to do. Then they had a setback and then it worked out okay anyway. And so we should just be like patient. I was like, okay, yeah, that's kind of the way things work. And so if you guys have figured out that 20 different people have told you the same story, even though everybody's story has been completely different, there you go, right? So it's interesting to hear their takeaways.
That's just great. Yeah. It's so true. You know, we try to guide these kids and teach these kids and which paths to take and all this stuff, and they're like, yeah, but show me. Prove it. Show me 1 in 10 that it worked out for when they had that plan when they were young, that they followed their path and they're happy and blessed, and yeah, it's the exception rather than the rule when you're that young. So I love that you're exposing them to all this stuff and allowing them to pursue it at you know, not at their leisure, but as their brain develops a little bit,
right,
as experience, because doing it too young, I think, is a pitfall for disaster. But
yeah.
Can I actually just ask a follow-up to that? You know, I love the description of all the choice and the agency, and I think, you know, the sort of distinction between kids who have it all figured out and kids who don't is a kind of really very plausible one. I think probably I'm going to guess that the kids who don't have it figured out probably outnumber those that do, maybe. But I'm also curious, kind of given that sort of range of choice, where the role of maybe having something come in that was completely unexpected, that wasn't actually chosen, the sort of something that kind of shakes you out of, you know, your sort of preconceptions of what your path might be. I mean, just think about, you know, our own experiences and kind of the formative experiences often being those that we would never have predicted. And so how do you see that kind of, you know, process of sort of pushing them out of their comfort zones in terms of this sort of path selection? Is that something that sort of would be, you know, a teacher taking a student aside and saying, I think you should really take this because you might find it interesting, or is there some other sort of way of thinking through that?
It's an awesome question, and you're right. There is like this whole sort of spectrum of I think I know what I want to do, and actually don't try talking me into anything else because this is what I want to do, to could you just tell me what I should do? Just fill in all the slots for me and I'll just do whatever you tell me to, but don't make me choose. Like, please don't make me choose, and everything in between. A few things come up. One, from the sheer logistics of it, they cannot always get everything that they want. Like, it's just not going to work for the schedule. And so there's times where I'm like, I know that's what you wanted, and you also wanted this. You can have one of them. Which one feels like more relevant to you? And so I think being in a place where you can't get everything you want is really important. And I think that needs to happen as soon as possible for us to just somewhat normalize that. It's going to be okay. You may not get everything you want. It's going to be okay. So there's that. I think the other is I am intrigued, fascinated, flummoxed by how often they talk each other into something that I tried to and got nowhere with. So this power of sort of like peer things, that this is going to be really fun. Please do it with me. I think, you know, like, and there's some power in peers that know you and like you and that you can follow along in, that I think is really healthy. And then the other component is when I sit with them and we make their course schedules, I talk about kind of and we talk about it in advisory, it comes up in connections, it comes up frequently. It's a through thread of this, like, where is my safe zone? Like, I can talk about anything in here. Where is my like stretch zone? Like, I am not comfortable, but I can stretch. And where is my danger zone? Like, in this area, I don't feel safe. I am like I can't function in this. It feels too vulnerable. It feels too personal. It feels too shaming or triggering or whatever that ends up being. And we talk with them a lot about, I don't want you just staying in your safe zone. So what are the things in here that are in your safe zone? And do you have at least one thing in your stretch zone? I'm never going to force you to go to your danger zone. If you really, really don't like math, I'm not going to say you have to take calculus. Like, there are some amazing options. Take statistics, take a business applications, take a finance kind of course. There are a lot of options. You don't have to take calculus if that's where your trigger may be. But I'm going to push you to do some kind of something with data, because you want to be a writer, you want to be an artist, you know, like, I need to know how to make money, and I need to know that how to take care of my money and to protect my things. So there is always an entry point there, but that just comes up in a lot of conversations. And because we've used that same like safe, stretch, danger zone analogy with them, when we're talking about, you know, introvert, extrovert personalities, or we're talking about your position on what you did over the summer, we talk to them a lot. You have the power of sharing your story. So share what you want to share, but we do talk about stretching. And it will be imperfect, but hopefully we will have stretched them more than they could have been stretched left to their own devices. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Or did you have a question?
More just a expression of gratitude prior to, I need to go to a lesson at 7:30. Thank you so much for walking us through the curriculum in detail. It seems obviously very well thought out. It's very inspiring, and congrats for this framework. It's very exciting. And I know we don't know the college entry. We haven't had any students go through there yet, but the fact that we're thinking and planning, again, like, really hats off to you and the community and the staff for putting that and sharing this with us. It's really great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. We are at our time, and I appreciate everybody for hanging out, and look forward to seeing you sometime soon. We have a family picnic coming up, so you know that's a thing. We have another Screenside chat in a couple of weeks, so looking forward to seeing you at one of those coming up. Yeah.
Thank you all. Nice to meet you. Thanks, Yvonne, for the wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yvonne.
Thanks so much.
Excellent. Excellent presentation. Really well done.
Oh, thank you, Elizabeth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well done. Bye-bye.
Bye.